breaking news. This is Mike B at the All Game Podcast, waiting for Q and Griff to join me. But we have breaking news in college football up there in Evanston, Illinois, where Pat Fitzgerald, head football coach of the last 17 years, has just been relieved of his duties. What is going on under his watch? Not sure, but again, let's talk about it. Let's be about it. All Game Podcast. You got to play the game to play the game. Coming up. All right, welcome to the All Game Podcast. This is Mike B, and got a little special show going on here because we got some information that's been passed through the news line. So before we get started, I want to say what's up to my guys. Q, how you doing today?
Good, bro. Good. No complaints.
You enjoying the weather down there? You back in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, I'm back in Atlanta. It's hot and rainy.
Like it is across the country, right?
Right.
Griff, what's going on with you, man?
Man, not too much. A little bit of news. Look like I might have to do some work tonight, but whatever.
So we just gonna have a regular conversation amongst the guys. Then all of a sudden the phone started blowing up, and we talk about as being student athletes and like what the lifestyle is. On sports, you hear about all the things going on from classes to relationships to coaching, and every year you talk about the hot seat, and this year there was a hot seat for Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern University, and today from the word across the news line is that he's just been released of his duties. After 17 years of coaching there, also being All-American, playing at Northwestern. Surprise to you, Griff, at all?
With all the news that's been coming out, since Friday, I was at a seminar for Fox Sports out in California Friday morning, and that's when that suspension was announced. So, we're kind of trying to wrap our hands around, okay, it's a suspension, but it started Friday, and no coaches are really working at this time of the year without pay. So is it really a suspension? What's going on? And as the news started to continue to come out with different reports that, I would say that the student newspaper at Northwestern did an incredible job of really covering the story and speaking with their sources and going through the process. It just seemed very unlikely that he was going to be in a situation where he was going to be able to be retained, as the head football coach at Northwestern, with the allegations of the, it's essentially, it sounds to be sexual assault, if you ask me, just by reading some of the details that are in some of the reports that are out there. So when you start to couple that and you start to think about what kind of responsibility a head coach has, he's responsible for the kids. That's his first priority, to make sure that those student athletes are in a safe environment. And listen, we've all played this game. We know how this stuff works. But at the end of the day, it's up to that head coach, whether you knew, you didn't know, you should have known. So with all of that just continue to mount, it looks like it all has come to a head today. And, it looks like he is not going to be leading Northwestern this upcoming football season.
So to catch everybody up, allegations started coming sometime last week about the job stability of Coach Fitz, and basically there were some allegations of some sexual misconduct within the program. Nobody knew for sure because some of the guys who were coming out were basically trying to be anonymous and didn't want their names known. But then you get article after article after article coming out with people having their own their own storyline. So I think, was it Friday the suspension came, Griff, like you said?
Yep.
They suspended him. The president suspended him for 2 weeks, and like you said, this is vacation time for most college programs. You're at this point, the players are on campus and they're working out. The strength staff got them, and the coaching staff is off. So, that to me was kind of like we talked about offline. Didn't make any sense because coaches weren't working anyway. So you started hearing whispers today that the president was going to meet with the hierarchy at Northwestern and figure out something different. And conversations we've all had on the phone today probably was around this. And, as soon as we got ready to start recording, lo and behold, Twitter Space is all over the news, and I'm pretty sure it's a big deal. Especially Q, because you brought it up about some of the accolades that he had playing at Northwestern, because he's one of those hometown kids. He's from Chicagoland area. Had a great career. Had a cup of coffee in the league, and next thing you know, he's a head coach at his alma mater. Q, I don't know what your feeling is about this, and as we go in depth and talk about how being a student athlete and how does it even happen?
Right.
Without God, how does it even happen? So,
man, that's one of the things for me, especially at this time and in the world, man. How does stuff like that happen? Like, I mean, you got to remember, we didn't have social media. We didn't have, and Griff said something earlier that kind of clicked. He said, "Hey, they don't, the Times don't cover them, or a lot of local newspapers don't cover them. There's not a beat, writer that covers them. That's a big deal. I mean, we had back then, that was normal for us. You see a reporter everywhere. That's Nemesis probably was. He was trying to get away from him, but they don't even have one.
Right.
So that kind of opens the door for maybe a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of, a lot of things get, overlooked.
But how does
you don't have somebody looking over your shoulder?
How does that happen? Because like Griff said, he's in charge of everything. And we've been with two coaches amongst our time at Illinois to where Mike White, we called him dear old dad. And you had John Mackovic who walked in the building taking charge and made sure he knew of everything that was going on. Now, the biggest issue right now is, and this might be why, he doesn't have a job anymore, is because they feel that he knew about it. And, some of the articles were saying that he knew what was going on in the actions. And I hate saying it, even participated in the initiation of some of the stuff. Because I don't see.
Listen, so I think that, so we'll go back to that. So I think that we actually had one of the greatest hazing experiences ever. Senior hit day was the most incredible thing ever. As far as hazing, because all you really had to do was keep your mouth closed. All you had to do was not tell what was eventually gonna happen. And honestly, I don't care what nobody say. When they put that bag over your head, that's traumatizing.
Yeah. That was no doubt.
I tell people all the time, big tough Marlon Primus. Oh man, Big Daddy Pre. When Pre saw them put that bag on that dude.
But Q, that's the biggest thing is, and we talk about the way our kids are being raised today, with the social media. These things could not have happened anymore. I mean, the thing that you're talking about, because that was emotional, because there wasn't no physical abuse on that.
But it might, and just like, but what the two things you said, we called Coach White our dear old dad. That was our boy. That was our buddy. He rolling with us. Mackovic came in immediately. Oh, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
It wasn't doing that. It wasn't doing that. And then we'll get back to this. But I think the other thing, I was telling the story today, is that we used to, people would get their hair cut, and it wasn't a good haircut. It was a bad haircut.
Right.
And one of the things that stood out is when Mackovic had us all in the same meeting, and our response was, it's just having fun. And he was like, it might be fun to y'all, it's not fun to them. It's not fun if they pick up the phone or their parents come to campus and they see their child with their hair looking that way. I told them I was going to take care of their child. This is not taking care of the child. So, that kind of always stuck with me. But I think when you get back to this Northwestern situation, you're talking about, there's a whiteboard in the middle of the locker room with a list of players who, certain things needed to happen to. And, there's also, they talk about, well, the locker room is for the players. It's not for the coaches, it's for the players. So you start to create that type of environment that you can do anything you want to in that locker room, right? Anything can happen because who's in there? Coaches aren't coming in apparently, or weren't coming in, but you still had equipment people that were in that locker room. There was enough people that should have been able to know and report the stuff that was going on if all these things are to be true. That were going on, naked bear crawls, center quarterback exchanges. If you met, all of this. I mean, it's just in this climate, not even this day and age, you just can't have your people doing that stuff. That's just not. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I think that's what's so shocking. I think for a lot of people to hear that. You mean this is going on in the locker room? They do this in the locker room? This went on? So it's like,
well, you hate thinking that they just close their eyes, because basically, when you think about the time when a new head coach comes in, and he builds a staff, he builds his football staff, then he builds his administration staff, then he builds the people around them, whether it be equipment, whether it be trainers, and a lot of times they don't have the say in, some of the staff that are there, but they have to build their alliances. And that head coach meets with those trainers and lets them know, this is how I want things done. This is what I need to know. And you hate saying it, he might put a couple spies in those groups and say, hey, I need to know what's going on in the locker room. I cannot believe, there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
What is amazing to me is not only the cameras of the university and the facility, but that you can get 110 kids, young men, to not say a word about this stuff until now. That's just what's dumbfounded to me, because if we talk about the haircuts and stuff like that, these are the things that you laugh and joke about. So obviously, what is the fear? Is there fear that they have? Because I can't get in the psyche of it, because I just don't understand, because I've never been traumatized like that. The senior hit day cue didn't traumatize me. It made me think about a few things in life, but it didn't traumatize me. But I couldn't imagine this sexual assault thing going on, and in comparison to the past, any of the past stories that we heard in football and basketball and college sports, this is just as big as any of those that I can remember.
Yeah, and I'd say this too. One of the other things that's a bit troubling is that, Fitz was the face of that program. He was also one of the, I forgot the group, Coaches Alliance. And he talked in I think in a video in 2014 about that there's no place for hazing, on the team. And you fast forward, and this is exactly what was going on apparently on one of his teams. And again, when they did the 6-month investigation, they didn't say that he knew anything. They couldn't conclude that he knew anything. But as a head football coach, and he said this out of his mouth, everything starts and stops with the head coach.
Right.
If you didn't know, you should have known. And that means you didn't have people in place who would have made sure you had the information. Right? And the worst thing, and the other thing, is, and we all thought Makovic was nuts. But that dude always said, hey, you better tell me the truth, because I don't want to find out another way. I need to know what I'm dealing with immediately.
Right.
And it didn't seem that, he really Reports are what they are. I mean, they didn't matter.
And like Mike was saying that sometimes coaches will pick certain people to kind of be spies but my thing is we all know that your trainer is your I don't if you the head coach, man, your trainer gonna make you or break you. Cause he your ears, your eyes, he around the players when they away from the team hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He hearing the conversations that aren't going on in the field or in the locker room and the training room.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be. I think that's because the trainer knows they hearing conversations that most people aren't hearing.
Yeah,
especially other coaches.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think there's quite a bit of neglect or ignorance or denial that happens in a situation like this, because people turn their heads and eyes to a different situation. And you brought up something. You said, well, why would 100 and some people be silent about this? And what it sounds like, one person triggered this entire thing. I think the other thing too is the education that they were getting at Northwestern. Northwestern deals with this sometimes with players that it's not uncommon for those guys to say, "I want a red shirt because I'm trying to get into business school. I'm gonna see if we can't get business school paid for as well." So you know how important that education is and what it can do for you down the line. And I wonder if that had something to do with why so many may have been silenced in this situation. And look, we all been on teams, so you never really want to be the guy that's ratting everybody out. So it's an unfortunate thing, but I just hope that these young folks get the help that they need, because this is reading the reports of what happened is just, it's incredible. And he was going to put his son was going to be a freshman, or is going to be a freshman in this upcoming class.
I mean,
his son is going into that environment.
Right. We've all crossed paths with Fitz, and and again, sometimes when you hear these horror stories after the fact, you start going back in your mind of what kind of relationship you had with him, or what kind of person, how did he fool, or if he did fool me. Because don't get it wrong, he's getting just as many positive, supportive emails and across the board, because the guys I talked to today, are not saying anything negative about this. They're like, this is crazy. That's all we keep saying. This is crazy. This is crazy. And so, and I'm gonna ask you this, Griff, because you've been around. Is this something that took the program over versus him nurturing it and cultivating it himself? Because, like you said, he's in charge of everything.
No,
So
I think it has to stop. I think it had to. It had to start and stop with him. I'm not saying that he encouraged it. I'm not saying that, but it's clear that there are things that he should have known and didn't stop from happening. So I'll tell you guys this. I'm in practice. We're in practice. We do the campus tour or whatever. So I've probably seen, 500, 600, 700 practices just since I've been working at the network of all these schools, right? Just combined. And I remember being in practice maybe 2 years ago. And some of the stuff that was coming out of these players' mouths at that practice, I had never heard before. And now I'm talking about my high school practice, college practice, time in the NFL. I had never heard some of the stuff that was coming out of these players. And it was one in particular that was leading this thing. And he was going after another player, and no one said a word to him. Like, pipe down. We don't need to talk like no one said anything. And I'm looking at my guys and I'm like, you ever heard anything like this? Nope, I never heard. It was that crazy. Bill Walsh says this, or has said this, that after about 10 years, you run your course, right? Because you piss off 10% of the people in your organization a year. So by the time you get to your 10th year, I mean, you've kind of run the gamut in that building or in that organization. And, Fitz he kind of ran the thing. He did things his way, and, that's the way it was going to be done. And it's interesting when you think about things starting to unravel. Yeah, he won the games. He took them to the Big Ten championship. But it was never, his undoing was not what went on the football field. It was stuff that went on away from the football field that ultimately got him to the point where, as we've talked about, reports say he's not going to be coaching. And it doesn't appear that he will be coaching again. So now the $1 million, is he fired with cause? Did he resign? Did they negotiate something? Those will be the next questions that I think that the university and the president are going to be the ones that, when they have their press conference, are going to have to address all of those things. And I think the other thing, if this has been a state university, we know more about what happened. But because it's a private university, they don't have to give out as much information as the state run universities do. And so hopefully we have some real clarity about what happened on the campus and what happened up in Kenosha and just when all of this stuff started.
Right. Because the word is that this stuff has been going on since early 2000s. So it's continuing. Like Q, when you was talking about the senior hit day that we participated in, it was so organized. It was so well driven. Whether it be somebody in operations, whether it be Coach White, and hopefully this doesn't get nobody in trouble. But I truly believe that they had meetings of how this was going to be constructed. What players. I mean, I remember when I was the senior and we were able to pick players, or not the senior. When I was able to come in there, we were able to sit there and know who was picking us. And so I go back to, like Griff just said, it baffles me to think that you had coaching staff sitting in a room discussing this, discussing the whiteboard, discussing the freshmen, discussing what players. They were sitting in the room discussing this, and nobody looked to the left or the right and said, "Hey, what are we doing?" That's what, because going back to the senior hit day, I could see, hey, this is going to be funny. It's all, guys are going to fall down. It was, the biggest thing is that the sound effects, the ambulance coming in, all of that played a factor. I can't see anything about a conversation about the stuff that I've read in these articles being okay. That somebody else was, if I was a new coach who just walked in, because they got some new coaches that just joined their staff, and to hear the conversation, say, hey, this is what's going on. Are you kidding me? What are y'all doing here? And that's, I don't know. How do you, I don't know. I can't wrap. You send your kids there, and like you said with Mac, you send your kids there to leave your house at 18 and be grown men at 22, 23, leaving the university, and they're going to be seeing therapists maybe for the rest of their lives because of this situation.
Yeah, I tell you this. When 2 years ago, when Hankwitz decided to step down as defensive coordinator, which probably was one of the worst moves, he was never able to recover. So he hires a guy who never had any success anywhere he'd been as far as coordinating. So you wouldn't expect him to be pegged as the guy that's gonna have the answers. Again, I'm sitting in a meeting. I ended up having call a game that because one of the guys got COVID. So I ended up having to call this game. So I go to the production meeting, I'm asking this guy questions, and I look. He gets up and walks away. I look at the broadcast team, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work one bit. And then asked Fitz about it, and it was like, kind of a nonchalant answer, like, oh yeah, we'll fix it. We'll get things taken care of. And really, going back 2 years, he has not been able to make the right decisions on the field. He struggled in that area. And then you couple that with what was going on off the field, that's why a lot of talk now is, well, shoot, he should have been fired for what he did on the field. But because he was, this great defensive player at Northwestern, had won 100 games, he's over 100 games, 100 wins, appeared to have been doing it the right way, got a lot of leeway. And it's amazing what winning, I guess, will do. And I think that's why it's so important that we know what was in that report. Because, they can keep the names out of it. They don't really care about that. But we need to know when this stuff started, how much they knew, because this is crazy. And now we're hearing reports that are coming out about their baseball program. Hostile work environment and hostile, players all in transfer portal. So this isn't going away, and I think they thought maybe this thing would go away, and they had no idea what they were up against, because once people started to read this, so I'm listening to the radio, and here in Chicago, let me tell you, they ain't talking about anybody's college team in Chicago. They'll talk about Notre Dame. They'll talk about Illinois if they get on a roll. They'll talk about Northwestern every now and then. But talk radio, the news was all driven by Northwestern. Northwestern has not been talked about this much. I can never remember. I mean, it was, you had alums that were just embarrassed about the way this was being handled. And it's, it's crazy to think in this day and age that people, even the young people that were doing this, could think this is okay. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you think it's okay to line up and tell rookies or somebody that did something bad while you're spinning around naked, they're rubbing up against your body? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, what are we doing?
Hey, man.
So, it's, I don't know.
Didn't nobody say I quit?
Nothing. So, I don't think this. I think we'll probably have more people come out. You'll probably have some, I'm sure lawsuits will be coming.
That's the biggest thing, is that it's going to go. I mean, because I kept on going back and saying, okay, what other events in college sports have happened like this? You had the Penn State. You've had the implications at Iowa. You had I'm not sure.
You had trainers. You had trainers.
Trainers in the Olympic sports. Yeah. I mean, you've had all of those stories, but just continually and these are great writers who are writing these stories I'm reading today and yesterday. They put me right there in the mix of what was going on. And I'm trying to think, as a student athlete, no way I could have been part of this. As a coach, you start looking at, is there any way I could even close my eyes? There's no way. As an advisor in the administration building, if you get wind of this, how do you even think, hey, what are we doing here? And so where does, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but where does Northwestern go from here? Because you talk about Fitz is gone, right? So Fitz being gone, and I pray for all the coaches there, but because I've been in the same scenario where our head coach was fired a week before the season started, so you're immediately start thinking about putting your house on the market, so Fitz being gone, they'll hire interim. They won't fire the whole staff. They'll probably bring an interim in on staff. I'm not sure. I know a couple of guys on staff, so they'll bring an interim in. and go through the season. I just got a email saying that the Notre Dame game in Ireland versus Northwestern is still a go. And is that still going to happen? Because that's been a year in the making. So is that still going to happen? But where does Northwestern go from here, in your opinion, Griff or Q? It's interesting.
I think that you got to wait and see what like Griff said. What's that paperwork saying? What's really in that investigation?
Because there's no NCAA penalty to this. This is not like we're shutting down the university and the program. This is not something like that. Q. This is like morals and ethics and all of that stuff.
And I'll tell you this: if stuff went on in Wisconsin, you've got some federal laws.
There it is, right there, crossing the line.
You've got. So there are some legal implications that could be out there. I'm not saying that that's what's happened, but there's some legal implications that could be out there, depending upon what happened. And so going back to it, that's why I think it's important. All the details have to come out. And reality is they don't have to, because they're a private institution. But if law enforcement gets involved, which, who knows what happens there. So it's hard to say where Northwestern goes, right? So I think when you look back and you talk about some other situations, how much did other coaches know? Which is much different than when you talk about what happened at Penn State, because that had happened some years before, and a lot of coaches weren't still on staff. So how many of these coaches knew what was going on? So this is going to be a tough process for Northwestern to go through. But at the end of the day, this is something that should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago and handled, and they didn't. So you talk about an interim coach. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be McGargle, the linebacker coach, McPherson, I think, the corners coach? He's been there. Or do you just say, hey, we got a new offensive coordinator. We have someone new that's on the staff. Let them run it, because we know that they weren't a part of it. We know 100% sure that they weren't a part of it. And I know we're jumping ahead, but how are you possibly going to recruit when you already know how difficult it is? Your pool that you're fishing in at Northwestern is so small. How are you even going to recruit now? I mean, they've got their hands full, and I'm not trying to jump the gun, because obviously, but just looking at what they need to do as a program to try to take steps to move forward when they can, this is going to be a very difficult proposition. And then you look and you say, well, okay, it's a head coaching job, but things are getting ready to get real bad. I shouldn't say real bad, but more competitive in the Big Ten, because we're getting away from divisions. So it's no longer are you going to be able to hang your hat on, we're in the race for the Big Ten West every year.
Right. I mean, even before this even happened, and and as guys who've been in this industry, we think about transitioning and, okay, who is, what jobs may come open or what coaches may be leaving. And, when Fitz's name comes up and you see his name come up, I immediately think Northwestern's a great job.
Yeah.
The academic standards in the Big Ten, private school, Chicago, funding, everything and anything you desire. This becomes a challenge now, because what is in line for the new head coach, and like you said, I don't want to jump ahead of time, but that changes the status of this program. Is this program, because Fitz did, let's not get it twisted, Fitz did a great job of bringing the program to some stature, because when we played, the guys was 1-12, or 1-10, 1-11, whatever, and wasn't winning, and they got to a point now they're playing in Big Ten championship games, you know, and having success and going to bowl games. And you feel that they're reputable, you know, but where does that program go? You know, it doesn't change. The academic standards at Northwestern doesn't change. But how many of the kids jump into the portal, you know, and what happens with that program? You know, how do they feel walking through campus and people looking at them and cracking jokes? You know, what does that look like? You know, but when things like this happen, you know, you got them 18, 19, 20-year-olds and ain't going to be real kind to them.
Well, guys, I got to go do a show, man. They just called me.
All right, man.
But I'll catch up.
All right.
Good convo. All right, fellas.
All right. You know, you hate to hear things like this going on. We touch base on a lot of things from a player standpoint, coach's standpoint, university standpoint. What is next for Northwestern University and the city of Evanston? So, you know, appreciate you guys watching. Till the next time, remember, play the game to play the game. All Game Podcast.